Hi, this is Connie Kubiak, and today I am interviewing Ellen Burkley Turner, and it is August 20th, 2015. Can you tell me where and when you received your credentials and where you currently work?
I took my registry exam in Phoenix, Arizona in September 1969. I've got registry number 78, and I am currently retired. I retired 3 years ago.
Can you tell me what drew you to EEG and diagnostics?
Well, actually, it was a bit of a fluke. I really didn't know what I was going to do after I graduated from high school. And we camped with some people who had a daughter who worked in EEG at the University of Wisconsin in Madison. And at the time, she said they've got a training program at the University of Iowa that's being funded by a federal grant. They're looking for people that are interested in working in healthcare and EEG, and they'll pay you $200 a month to go to school for 12 months. I thought it was a win-win situation. I didn't know what I wanted to do. Healthcare was something that interested me, and so I applied for the program, and I was one of the 4 that was chosen to participate. So that's how I got into it, and I've loved it ever since.
Was this a popular specialty when you first started your career?
No, it wasn't. And I didn't know what EEG was before I actually applied. I had to do a little investigation to figure out what it was and what it consisted of. And a lot of people had no clue what EEG was or why you'd ever have an EEG. As many people recall, a lot of people thought EKG, you've got it wrong. It's EKG. But, it was just something no one knew about.
Who were your early mentors?
Well, John Knott and Lila Snodgrass were the ones that were the main head of the program at the University of Iowa. People such as Maxine Wilson-Young and Margaret Schaefer also were very involved and helped in our training.
What were your earliest career influences?
I liked the training program we were in. We had didactic work, but we also had a lot of hands-on experience. And we had only 4 people were in our class, so we were very competitive, but yet we all helped each other out and helped each other get through the class. And I think, having that close of training really made it a lot easier to get through in the long run. You weren't embarrassed to ask questions because if you had a question, somebody else had the same one. So I think that's what helped to egg me on.
If you had not become an EEG technologist, what would you have liked to have done?
I probably would have gone into healthcare, and most likely it would have been nursing because it was such a busy career, and I think, you could go anywhere and get a job as a nurse, whereas EEG wasn't something you could go anywhere. You had to be in a larger city and not in the community, the smaller communities back then. Now there are EEG techs all over, but back then you needed something where I would have needed something where I could have been a little closer to home probably.
Why do you think this field took off when and how it did?
I think there was a definite need. I think that once people found out that there was help for people that had seizures and that had headaches and that had strokes, I think in learning disabilities and mental health issues, I think it was great that it could be documented, and I think that's one of the things that helped it take off. I think the fact that ASSET was instituted and that the physicians had a registry exam, and I think people had a little more credibility.
What equipment did you train on, and what were the main limitations of it?
Well, the equipment we trained on was GRASS. We had Model 8s, Model 6s, and eventually Model 3 was one of the first ones. 3, 6, and then eventually we got 8s and 10s. The Model 3 was a tube machine, and that, I know other folks you've interviewed have shared all the different problems we had with that, but it was not a very portable, friendly machine. It had tubes, and you had to turn it on and let it warm up for quite a while before you could ever use it. And that machine definitely tested your calibrations. If you didn't check your calibrations at the beginning of every record, you were in trouble, at least at the University of Iowa, because it could easily go out of whack, and it was our job to make sure that we had it recording properly in order to get an accurate EEG. That was the worst one. I think the other grasp machines were pretty dependable, and some of them were a little bulky, but that was what the main equipment was that we worked with there. Over the years, you said, I've used Beckman, Neon Coden, Axeltech, and Biologic, Neuroconcepts. I love how the EEG machines have progressed to computers and how much easier it is to change things. I mean, when I started EEG, if you didn't catch it on the right montage, you were out of luck. And we were well encouraged to choose the proper montage to see certain things, whether it be vertex sharp as soon as the patient went to sleep, or whether it was positive spikes or whatever. We were always, you want to be on that montage when the patient gets drowsy. You want to be able to see if you can do this. And now with the computers, heavens, you can rearrange things and change things so much easier. So I think that's been a real advancement.
What memories do you have of your training program?
Well, the memories of my training program were a lot of time spent measuring heads. We had to practice on each other, and I had long dark hair. And it was always I was not the favorite person for people to measure because my hair always got in their way. But it would take 2 to 3 hours for us to measure a head. And then we'd have to sit and hook up, record a little bit just so that we at least felt like we accomplished something, I guess. But that was probably one of the most painstaking processes. Looking at the EEG, it all looked like Greek chess, I think, to begin with, but eventually it started to make some sense. I can remember our electronics teacher, a fellow named Pete Siva, and he always would try and get me to understand all these different things that he was talking about, and it just didn't make sense for quite a while. But then all of a sudden, the light bulb went off, and it did. But I think he had his patients tried on more than one occasion with me.
What are the main ways in which the field has changed over your career?
And the computers has got to be the main change and a definite improvement in my view. EEGs in the OR were not something I was ever involved with in training, but over the years I've had some experience with it. It's not something that I would like to do on a full-time basis. Long-term monitoring is another one of the changes. Back in the day, we used to run an EEG from maybe 20 minutes to 40 minutes, minimum of 20, but if you had a patient that went right to sleep, you could do that. But then suddenly the EEGs are getting longer and longer. Some docs require that you run 2 and 3 hour EEGs. I was fortunate in that that wasn't an experience I had a whole lot, although we did do long-term monitoring to a certain extent. But that's about it.
How has scientific knowledge changed the field, and what do you think were the big breakthroughs?
Again, the computers, I think that makes everything a lot faster, easier. You can rearrange how the EEG appears, what montages you're using, what filter settings. So I think that's one of the biggest breakthroughs. And then, again, the long-term monitoring, being able to hook up a patient, have them hooked up to a system for multiple days, if necessary, and being able to go back and review it and see what happened when, and to be able to clip it out and save it on a little CD or a little drive, it's amazing.
What are the 2 to 3 big issues in EEG that people are working on to solve today?
I don't know that I really know what people are working on. I mean, I know a lot of long-term monitoring is going on, but I really don't know what they're working on to solve today.
What are the main areas of professional discussion or disagreement today?
Again, I've been out of the field for 3 years, and so I'm not really up to date on what all is happening right now.
What are you most proud of in your professional life?
I think one of the things I'm most proud of is the fact that several of the folks that I trained in a private hospital went on to take their boards and pass their boards even on the first try. And I think that, that gives me great pride.
Where do you see neurodiagnostics in 10 years?
In 10 years, I would imagine it will be in all little hospitals across the country. And unfortunately, I'm afraid that if that does happen, the quality of the EEGs may hurt. I think that EEG is not something you can learn overnight. And a respiratory therapist may be a terrific respiratory therapist, but that doesn't mean they can do an EEG. I think we need to stand up for ourselves and make sure that our field doesn't slip, because I think that's a possibility.
What is the best piece of advice that you have ever received?
Be patient. I think patience is a virtue, and I think in EEG you really need to have it, whether you're trying to learn how to measure and apply electrodes, or whether you're trying to teach someone to apply electrodes according to the 1020 system, whether you're waiting for a patient to go to sleep or to have that little spell. They've been having them all the time you've been applying the electrodes. Why can't they do it now that they're hooked up? I think patience is a virtue that really pays off.
Is there anyone else in electroencephalography that you think would be beneficial for us to talk to?
Well, I know you've talked to several folks, but I think that Becky Ming and Margaret Schaefer would both be good folks to talk to. They both have been involved in EEG for years and years, and I think that they would possibly have quite a few good things to add.
Who are the prominent electroencephalographers, living or deceased, who should be documented?
As other folks have said, I think John Knott and Chuck Henry are two of the long-time, never-forgotten folks that have made such a difference in our careers and in our field. That would be who I would include.
Okay. Well, I want to thank you for conducting the interview with us, Ellen. Hold on just a second, and I'll stop the recording, and then we can chat a little bit again, okay?
Okay.